Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am so excited to be joined by none other than the Melissa Denizard to talk about her new docu-series called How to Celebrate Thanksgiving Without Clean Water. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
So Melissa, it's my understanding that Babson College actually helped to fund this project. Can you tell us about how you got that to happen?
Yeah, so I attend college at Babson College in Massachusetts, and basically the college has this fund called the Glavin Global Fellows Fund, and the gist of it is that they grant students money to go do research in foreign countries. But for me, when I was pitching this film, what I really wanted to do was go to a domestic city. And so for about a month, I had this idea mulling over in my head, and I was thinking, okay, how do I pitch this idea in a way that speaks to the multicultural facet of Flint, speaks to the urgency of the situation, and also humanizes the situation in a way that will compel people to want to give me money in the first place. So How to Celebrate Thanksgiving Without Clean Water is the result of that kind of thinking. For me, it was thinking about, okay, so framing the Flint water crisis through the lens of Thanksgiving, that's very powerful, because already you have this schema of what you think about Thanksgiving, and then it's thinking about how do you celebrate family, how do you celebrate gratefulness when you don't have clean water, when you have to be very strategic about how you even cook your food, and you have to be, like something as basic as clean water is not available to you. So for me, framing it through that lens was thinking about how to compel people to empathize with the situation and to get them to fund my project. Advocacy is not just about speaking up, it's not just about having the facts or etc. It's also about making sure that you are really good at storytelling, really good at communicating your long-term vision. And so for me, it was that simple. It was about how can I frame the Flint water crisis and the urgency of the crisis through a lens that's going to actually compel people to empathize with it, and to also convince people that I can do something different with the situation. Because I mean, at the point that I went to Flint, there have been so many documentaries about Flint. Flint is national news, but for me, I was thinking about how can I get people to empathize with this situation in a different way. How do I frame the situation in a different way? And that's how I got the funding for it. So now that we're going down this timeline, you've gotten your funding, I would love to hear how you reached out to the Flint community, how you got people to interview, and how you got contacts there. When I got the funding, it was, I think, September or early October, and I was gonna go to Flint in November to film over Thanksgiving break. And so I basically had a month to schedule the logistics and to figure out, who I was gonna interview and everything else on the ground. So I basically put out a Facebook post, and I said, hey, to all my fellow activists, organizers, if anyone has any connections to people in Flint, please let me know. And I think the first lead that I got was to this young woman who goes to school up in upstate New York, and her name is Melanie, and she had done a lot of work in Flint when the crisis, I would say in the middle of the crisis, so probably about 2016. And she gave me a connection to Carol Kinkade, who is actually one of the people I interviewed for the film. And Carol then, hooked me up with different Facebook groups, and I got on the phone with her, and she basically gave me a overall idea of Flint and what was going on in Flint at the time. And again, she gave me access to Facebook groups, and at the time, and I think this still happens to this day, I received some pushback from residents, because you have to understand that at this point, and I went in 2018 and now it's 2020, so it might have gotten a little bit worse, but at the point where I was reaching out to Flint's residents, mind you, this has been going on since 2014, so residents are used to journalists, documentarians coming in and asking for their stories, and the residents not really seeing anything come into fruition for their storytelling. So when I came into these Facebook groups, I received some pushback from residents who, first of all, didn't really want to talk about race and what it had to do with the water crisis. They didn't want to, they didn't see how racism played a part in it. And so I received pushback on that. But I also received pushback on people not wanting me to be in the community. And so it was having to understand, yes, there are gonna be people who do not want me here because of their past relationships with journalists, but I had to, I had to, again, stick to my vision, and I had to continue reaching out to people until I found people that were still interested in being interviewed and still interested in this project. And I think at some point when I was doing outreach, I almost said, let me just back up and let me scrap this film, because for me, I was more so thinking along the lines of, if the residents don't want me here, then I shouldn't be forcing this to happen. But I think as I was in the cusp of making that decision, I actually got in contact with some folks who were very eager to participate and very eager to help me out and to get their story out there. So that's how outreach went. It was basically me jumping into a Facebook black hole and receiving pushback, but ultimately finding a few people who were interested in wanting to be filmed. So it was first going onto Facebook, then getting on the phone with these people, and even though I had confirmed some interviews while I was here in Massachusetts and in New York, once I got to Flint, there were some people who changed their mind last minute and didn't want to be interviewed anymore. So at the time, I was really disappointed, because I'm just like, oh, like that's a subject that I no longer have. But in the end, I was really grateful, because that meant that there were less people to actually edit into the film, which made my job a little bit easier. So yeah, that's such an interesting story, and it's so interesting to hear how you were able to navigate through all that pushback that you were receiving. Now, talking about that pushback, were you at all fearful about telling a story that isn't yours? Yeah, these are great questions, by the way. So honestly, yes, I was very fearful about telling a story that is not mine. Up to the point that I went to Flint, and even when I was in Flint, I was so worried. I was just like, why am I here? Why am I, like, what gives me the right to tell this story? And so I was very fearful that I just wasn't gonna do this story justice, that I was gonna fuck it up somehow. But I eventually got a hold of myself, and I started to look at other documentaries, and it was clear that for me there was a gap in the way that that Flint story was being told. There were stories missing. When I think about Flint, and what I think a lot of people don't know about Flint and the way that the story was told, is that the story was told through a specific lens that the media thought that could get people to empathize with the people, in Flint. The fact that the people didn't have clean water wasn't enough. Like, there had to be a warping of the story to make sure that this water crisis got the national attention it needed. So what a lot of journalists did is they told this story through the lens of like little kids, so like babies. They were saying that the babies didn't have clean water, or journalists would tell the story through a very white lens. Like they wouldn't include all the time that this was a predominantly black and poor community. So it was thinking about, for me, watching these documentaries, I'm like, there is a gap missing here, and I can provide some of those missing puzzle pieces. I thought to myself, there's something about the way that I'm telling the story that is different and that's necessary. And so although I'm fearful about telling the story, I still have to tell it, because I know that there are pieces missing. And because I had permission from some community members, it gave me even more of a push to tell this story. Because it would have been one thing if I was in this community as an intruder, but for me, once I got the cosign of people who were in the community who were being impacted by this crisis, it was like, I know you're insecure, I know that you're scared, but like Beyonce says, my fears can't go where I'm headed. So I had to suck it up and get to telling the story. Y'all, if you like what you're seeing, if you love this interview as much as I do, make sure you hit that like button and leave a comment down below. And if you're new here, make sure you also hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that you're made aware of every single time I post a new video. And so with all that you learned, what would you tell other documentarians or other people at home who are hoping to do similar work that you've done? What would you tell them about telling stories that aren't theirs? The advice I would give to someone who is telling a story that's not their own, and for a lot of advocates, that's a lot of us, right? I would say to be very, grateful that you even got this person to tell you your story, but to not tell stories with profit in mind. Because I think when you start a project with profit in mind or notoriety in mind,
what tends to happen is you will censor that person's story because what your vision is may not align with what their truth is. You feel me? So I think that at the end of the day, we have to be a lot more honest as storytellers, as advocates, and we have to be a lot more willing to not be respectable, to put the truth out there as it is, bare bones and everything, and tell the story as it's supposed to be told. What do you hope that the audience gets once they watch this film? I mean, there's so much that I want the audience to get out of this film. When I first started and when I pitched the idea, what I wanted the audience to get out of the film was for them to know that Flint still doesn't have clean water. And while I do want the audience to know that Flint does not have clean water, I also want the audience to know that this is what happens, or this is what the government is capable of doing to predominantly poor and black communities. This is what's possible. I mean, Flint was not just, dirty water, it was, and Gina says this when I interview her. She says Flint was a man sitting at his desk saying, I'm going to make this decision. I am going to make this decision even if it's not at the best interest of the people. And other people in the film also talk about how there were direct laws that were racist in intent and had racist impacts. The emergency manager law in Michigan, but they were allowed to pass through because there was a lack of civic engagement. And so I think one thing I really want the audience to get out of this is that it is important to be civically engaged. I mean, for me, I understand the whole notion of not voting, but the fact of the matter is whoever you have in office makes organizing a lot more easier, or it makes it a lot harder. So it's thinking about how do we elect the most progressive officials to advocate for us on the local, national, and state level, so that for me, organizing on the local level, it's a lot easier, or that I can actually have access to clean water, or access to affordable food, or access to affordable water rates. I mean, like they mentioned, Flint has some of the highest water rates in the country. So all of these different things, I think, really point to how important it is to be civically engaged. But I think it's also, I think the audience also needs to take into account that racism is so insidious, so catastrophic, that I mean, even if you are civically engaged, like, there will be people, government officials, or whoever, corporate entities, just like waiting at the wings, waiting to take away your power. So it's thinking about vigilance, it's thinking about power differentials, it's thinking about racism and classism, and how these two structures have always been at the core of America, and how they work together to disenfranchise black people and people of color. I mean, there's so much in this film that I want people to get out of it. I want you all to get more comfortable with critiquing your elected officials, critiquing people like Obama, because Obama, like, let's be honest, his legacy is not very kind to black people. So I think there's just so much, there's a myriad of things I want people to get out of this film. But I also want to hear what you all are getting out of it. Like, when you watch the film, what about it speaks to you? What do you take away from it? How are you going to enact what you learned from this film into your regular day lives, into the organizing work that you do in your hometown? So there's so much I want the audience to get out of it, but overall, watch it. I like, just watch it first and see what you get from it, and I would love to hear what you get out of this film. And now for an audience favorite, we have what we call a lightning round of questions, Melissa. And this is supposed to be a rapid fire question answer style. Are you ready? Woo, lightning round. All right. What is your favorite episode? My favorite episode is episode 1, because I think the production value in that episode is so great. I think that the beginning is so emotional, really captures the essence of what I'm trying to say, and how this issue impacts the residents. That is definitely my favorite episode. Are you proud of your work? Am I proud? Yes, absolutely. I'm so proud. This is my favorite project, and I think this is my most mature project. Like I said, I am a self-taught filmmaker. I learned how to do all of this on my own, and to see it come to this point in my journey to becoming a filmmaker, I mean, this is incredible, and this is a story and a project that I am beyond proud of. Like, I actually watch the film. Usually I don't watch my stuff. Once it's out there, I don't revisit it because I'm usually so embarrassed.
buy my end product. But I mean, this is something that I will watch over and over and over again because I truly enjoy it. Like, I truly am happy with what I produced, and so I'm very proud. Yeah.
And there you have it. That was my guest, Melissa Denizard, talking about her new docuseries, How to Celebrate Thanksgiving Without Clean Water. Make sure that you check out the 3 episodes and that you leave a comment telling us what you learned. We are so excited for you to take what you learned from this interview and apply it to your organizing work in your hometowns. And that's all we have. Make sure that you subscribe, and we will see you next time.